Hello，大家好，今天是2025年的10月19日。今天我们来聊一下特斯拉，因为它下个星期财报，10月22日盘后，那17个分析师预期是有不错的表现 EPS，然后5个分析师给的是往下看 EPS。最近的一个季度呢，这个 EPS，no gap base in line，gap base 呢是0.33。因为是有回购哈，所以它这个是应该是有回购，所以它这个 gap base 0.3，因为它 no gap base 呢是不包含回购这些项目的，它是相当于刚刚 in line。EPS 呢这个操作空间很大，所以我们不用特别在意。它的收入呢这个是我说 gap base 这个不用特别在意哈，因为它是可操作空间很大。那这个 revenue 的操作空间几乎是没有的，所以它这个 revenue beat 还是不错的一个现象。我们看一下过去的几个季度，从收入上来看呢，大概有一半的季度呢，它的 EPS 是不及预期的，然后 earning 上看呢是，反正也差不多吧，最近表现不太好。这里值得注意的是，特斯拉它是一个周期股哈，因为没有人年年买车，所以基本上都是5年、4年、5年买一辆车的话，那它这个周期性可以看得出来，从2020年呢是一个上升的趋势 ，EPS 增长呢是虽然有小的波动，但总体来说是持续上涨的。从2023年开始呢，就开始断崖式下跌，增长变成个位数，到2025年呢，连续2个季度，其实从去年的第4季度就开始，就是明显的走入一个下降趋势了哈。目前是一个负的11%的、负9%的这么几个指标，所以呢，最近的一个季度呢，很难说它就能绝地逢生哈。我个人认为这种概率非常的小，大概率会延续它的这个收入继续缩水的这么一个现象。我觉得特斯拉还是需要时间啊，可能2026年或者是2020年下半年会开始有反弹。那暂时呢，还是需要更多的耐心。那以它目前的估值来看呢，439块钱，可以说是应该是把它人形机器人、人工智能以及 Robotaxi 自动驾驶这些全部都算进去，有一个比较好的业绩表现下的一个估值。所以，持有特斯拉的股东呢，就是需要有持续的梦想，就是才能坚持住啊，所以也是非常值得鼓励。那，至于我从价值的角度上来看呢，目前这个股票呢是严重的高估，因为即便是分析师给出的这个指引哈，从这个分析师的态度来看呢，明年的指引是最低的是1块钱都不到，最高的是4.4毛6，也就是说分析师的观点差距非常大。如果以中间值来看的话，增长虽然是38%，但是很难说这里面谁对谁错哈，有可能是多的是低的，有可能少的是高的。所以这个呃，这个40%这个增长呢，以259现在的 PE 来看呢，即便它能够实现，也是非常高的。除非它，比如说今年是1.96、4.46的增长的话，那大概是，4.46，算一下啊，4.46除以1.69是263哈。除非它能够实现最高级别增长哈，263 PE 才能达到260哈，它这个没到，股价还能，如果说按最高级别的这个 EPS 的 expectation 的话，它的股价还能再涨一点，可以达到 PE 264这个样子哈，所以目前呢已经是 price in 了明年所有分析师的 top line，OK，所以呢这次的股价呢，我个人不是特别看好，所以呢。我自己没有持有特斯拉，但是我只是分享我的观点，不构成投资建议，希望大家只是当娱乐听就好哈。那如果你看未来的这个增长，也没有超过说长期增长，也没有说超过100的哈，所以它这个 PE 260呢，是站不住的。OK，那从收入上来看呢，收入呢也就是， 最近这几年3年也就是20几，那5年以后的事儿呢，这个就谁也不能把握了，所以可信度相对比较低。但是这个20%几呢，市销率以15来算的话，还可以还可以，这个市销率还可以，偏高，但是呢就还可以，因为这个目前市场里呢，很多收入增长18%，而且是稳定增长18%的公司，市销率才5啊6没有5、66啊7啊有8呀这样的有很多。那以这个打个比方，虽然不是同一个行业的但是你如果看 TTD 的话，它的未来的收入增长呢是在17、16、16它的这个市销率才是它的增长的1半左右而且明年是7、6、5这么一个概念你如果看特斯拉的话，它增长虽然比较快，预期是17、19、20，但是它的这个市销率呢是13、11、9总的来说还可以没有说特别高，但是不是说特别也不便宜，从市销率这个角度上来看，但是从 EPS 上来看，这个是严重高估了如果综合这个 EPS 和这个营收的话，这两个加起来是这个特斯拉的这个估值还是非常非常高的那接下来呢，我将分享几个视频。首先呢是这个一个 Asset Management 它的这个对特斯拉财报前的这个 Preview， 然后再分享一个这个投资大佬叫 Jim Chanos 呢，他4个月以前他开始做空特斯拉，然后3个月以前呢他又表态，他说他对特斯拉也无法去平衡，也是觉得挺有意思连基金大佬都觉得无能为力就是这个股价确实是超出了正常人能够理解的范围，不是说正常人，是正常投资人的理解范围好，那我们现在一起来分享一下这3个视频。
Welcome to Pressure Points. Our topic is Tesla earnings, and they're going to be reporting on October 22nd. And just taking a step back, the big picture here is over the past 3 months, Tesla stock has done well, up just over 30%. The Nasdaq's up 8%. And during that period, we've had a positive delivery number that is largely thought of as kind of one-time in nature, and not a ton of updates related to how things in Austin and San Francisco and other markets have been on the robotaxi and Optimus front. And so when we put all that together, the stock continues to look forward into the future, 26, 27, and 28 for this market cap expansion. And I want to kind of start there, and just in terms of kind of the raw numbers, and maybe lead with this bad news category related to this transition period that the company has described that we're in. And when I hear transition period, I hear less visibility. And I want to give some perspective in terms of what the numbers look like and the visibility in the numbers, at least on the delivery front. So they just reported 7%, just over 7% delivery growth in the September quarter. That, of course, was promoted by the tax credit ending. But the expectation, at least the FactSet number for the December quarter, is down 6%. Now, I caution that number is basically 52 analysts, and only a smaller set of those analysts actually keep up to date with their numbers. And so if you look at those numbers who have been more active in terms of making adjustments, for example, after the last delivery numbers, they're looking for more like down 10% in the December quarter, which would kind of suggest that's where the whisper number is at. As far as next year, they're not going to give like an explicit delivery growth target, but I suspect that they'll say they expect deliveries to be up, flat, or down, some language around that. Currently, the FactSet numbers are plus 15%. Now, I think that the whisper numbers are more like plus 5 or plus 10%, but the plus 15 is where the in-print numbers lie. And my sense is that number is heavily dependent on how you would answer this next question. And that question is, has Tesla already rolled out their more affordable model? If the answer is no, they haven't, and they're still going to roll out a more affordable model at the end of this year, and it's going to ramp next year, then I think it's reasonable to expect 5, 10, 15% delivery growth for next year. If your answer is that the lower price Model Y is that vehicle, then you start thinking about flattish numbers for next year. I'm currently in the camp, I seem to evolve week to week, but currently in the camp that the cheaper Model Y is in fact that more affordable vehicle. And that's based in part on what they said on the last earnings call, specifically is that this new vehicle would not be negative to margins and that it would be ramping at the end of this year, in production at the end of this year. And so to roll out a new model that's in production that's not negative to margins, it almost would have to be something that is already in motion, something that has some history to it. And so that's why I think that this lower price Model Y is in fact a more affordable vehicle. And based on that, it's definitely a move in the right direction. I think it supports Tesla being flat, maybe up a little bit for next year, but probably isn't going to support a 15% growth number. And so I would just caution that maybe some commentary, if that ends up being the case, may end up weighing a little bit on shares. I did do a poll on X. After the new Model Y came out, 60% of people said that they believe that that new Model Y is still in the works. It's not, the more affordable model is still in the works and yet to come. 40% say that it was that. So it seems like people are generally pretty split on how that plays out. Overall, I would expect that the revenue numbers for next year, I'm still talking about this being a transition period, to probably go down for next year after post earnings. But of course, that is largely window dressing when it comes to the Tesla conversation, because it's about autonomy. And I'm going to start talking about any updates from the robotaxi side. Of course, Tesla, San Francisco, we don't know how many vehicles are there, but it doesn't seem like it's been expanding. The number of invites has not been expanding that much. Generally, the thinking is there's probably 50 vehicles on the road. That was a similar number as a couple months ago. The geofence has expanded a couple times now, more comparable to where Waymo is, but we don't hear about big changes to the geofence outside of that in Austin. And so I think it's safe to say there has not been a lot of updates related to Austin. The company has talked about coming into a couple new markets at the end of this year. That would be Phoenix and Las Vegas, November, December timeframe, and 20 to 23 U.S. metros planned by the end of the year, pending approval. And of course, the pending approval is the get out of jail free card. Like, as long as it's pending approval, it's who's to say what happens there. But I think that any commentary around how that's progressing, of course, people are going to be very keenly listening to. And so overall, what Elon said on the last call, I'm going to read you his quote regarding the robotaxi rollout. He said that the robotaxi fleet will go from tiny to gigantic in terms of operations in a pretty short period of time. Like, my guess is that it has a material impact on our financials around the end of next year. We'll continue to expand outside of Austin. So tiny to gigantic, end of next year. Now, end of next year is actually a definitive time frame. And so the tiny to gigantic wasn't very clear, but end of next year. So they still, if you just hold them to the letter of the law of what they said in the June earnings call, they still have time to say Austin is going to ramp next year, and they could credibly come back and say, well, we never really told you it was going to ramp that much significantly before that. So they have some room around that, but I just want everybody's bearings to be on the same page in terms of what to expect and what that commentary means. Next, related to kind of the autonomous opportunity, is the unsupervised FSD for personal use. Now, this came up on the last call. This was the first time on the last call where Elon talked about being paranoid. And he said that it will be available for unsupervised personnel by the end of this year in certain geographies. So it's a pretty clear bar. That bar has been set many times before, and they have not achieved it. My general sense is it doesn't really matter what he says about unsupervised FSD. Most people are hyper-focused on the robotaxi opportunity and not focused as much on FSD. As far as non-Tesla owners contributing their vehicles to robotaxi network, last quarter, Elon said sometime next year. He said, as I mentioned, I'm paranoid about this safety thing. And I think this paranoid on safety thing is a relatively new phenomenon that he's talked about. It was new in the last earnings call, and I think it comes from some of the number of interventions that they have had in Austin has been greater than what they had expected. And so understandable that is his message. And I think they'll probably continue on that message. But he did say non-Teslas into the robotaxi network in the next year. And kind of the last piece in the autonomy conversation is around Optimus. This is, the big X factor to assuming Elon gets his pay package approved on November 2nd at the shareholder meeting. Optimus is going to be one of the biggest X factors to that. And he said last quarter we'll have a bunch of Optimus robots on stage at the shareholder meeting, that being November 6th. And I'd be surprised if at the end of 5 years and 60 months from now, if we're not roughly making 100,000 Optimus robots a month. He says, I would be shocked. So 5 years out, I mean, that's so far out there. I mean, he's basically saying, don't put too much into Optimus right now. I think that investors generally aren't. If we pull all the autonomy pieces together, whether it is the robotaxi network, whether it's FSD, whether it's Optimus, put all those and kind of put it all together, I think what matters most is commentary about how Austin is going and how fast they're going to be rolling out new markets in the US. That's probably going to be the biggest determinant in terms of how Tesla shares trade shortly after their earnings. So those are the pressure points. I do want to end with one postscript related to the regulatory credit business. Now, this falls well below the fold into the postscript section because typically investors have dismissed this as any sort of ongoing credible part of their business. It is a large amount. It can be up to 40% of net income in a given quarter. After the June quarter, they had written down their expected revenue, the expected income that they were going to get from these tax credits, basically all income. And they had written that down from just over $4 billion to $3.5 billion because of some changes in the regulatory environment. This has nothing to do with the consumer tax credit that we saw ending at the end of September. This is about traditional automotive not hitting their mileage thresholds, and they have to essentially pay a penalty for doing that via these tax credits. My sense is that this tax credit pool, this 3.5, gets skinny down and ends up being a much smaller number in the future. I don't think it really matters. Yes, Tesla's multiple is going to go up because that could go up by 20, 30%. I don't think anybody cares because it's not a really core part of their business. Final piece, the energy business doing great. It's up 50, 60% for 3 quarters in a row, then down 10%. It's 15% of revenue. It's starting to become more material, but I think it still falls well below the fold in terms of what people are focused on this earnings period. On behalf of Pressure Points, I'm Gene, and we'll see you on October 22nd.
好，他这个视频呢，其实讲的已经比较清晰了啊，就主打一个非常不确定性哈。从我个人观点来看呢，如果一家公司它的基本面已经不支持的它的这个stock price 的话呢，在 earning 之前，股价已经涨了30%，对我来说这是一个 sell， 就是说你可能不需要全部，但起码落袋为安50%，这是一个非常合理的 strategy 啊。针对我其他的这个仓位，我也会这么做。如果我已经发现它在earning 之前股价上涨30%，这是一个很明显的 price in 的一个信号，也就是说 earning 击败预期已经没有意义，而是要大幅击败预期才会有更多的增长，而这个概率在以当前的环境下呢，它是非常非常小的，因为它里面的解释的就是说它的上一季度连续的下滑 revenue year over year 下滑 EPS year over year 下滑，然后 credit tax 给予它的 boost， 而不是它真正业务的增长，然后这些 less visibility 呢，同时这个有52个分析师他提到，然后有些分析师呢，就是大部分分析师都是撤回了他这个就是下调了他的这个指引啊。那他的这个 chip model 呢，具体能够到什么时候就不管他今年年底能有什么举措呢，这个作者的观点都说很难实现15%的这个增长哈，就是要么你是可能10%左右，或者是5%左右这么一个增长，可能5%更现实一点。如果从人形机器人来看的话，5年要有100,000的这个 Optimus 这个模型呢，还是仁者见仁，智者见智的吧。那这里呢， 提到了一个 regulatory credit， 也就是未来这个不是 tax credit， 是 regulatory credit， 这个也是在减小，所以这个对特斯拉的这个 challenge 还是挺大的哈。那我想到我们可以看一下 insider 在干什么哈，我们看看这个公司的内部人士最近有没有卖股票的交易哈。那7月17号呢 independent director 有卖，7月15号 independent director 有卖，但是这个是一个 follow 它一个计划的，所以不是特别在意。但是上面这个是7月17号，这个是6万股哈，然后 co-founder 这个是Technoking of Tesla CEO Director， 这伊隆马斯克他买入了在389，这是一个非常乐观的信号哈。但是这个乐观的信号很难说它是一个长期或者是短期的，这个我们要稍微小心点。除此以外呢，再没有人买了哈。那这个其他人2025年8月4日或者是7月15日呢，他们是以非常低的价格买入很多股票啊，所以不是以300多块钱的这个价格。好，这个关于这个视频呢，我想讲的就这么多。那我们接下来看一下这个大佬 Jim Chinos， 他4月份做空的时候，他是怎么就是他提出的理由是为什么要这么继续做空哈。在开始视频之前，先稍微说一下啊，这个 Jim Chinos 呢，他就是当年做空安然，然后名声大噪的这么一个金大佬，后来他也做空了这个瑞幸咖啡，所以他的眼光还是标准的哈。但是很搞笑的是，4个月以前做空，3个月以前呢，他又说，他承认失败哈，但是他清没清仓这个就不知道了哈，这个可能有兴趣的可以去查一下。我们先看一下，他对特斯拉做空这个哈。
Comes on the heels of 2 days of China-U.S. trade talks in which President Trump has declared a done deal. He talks about the U.S. imposing 55% tariffs on China and China imposing 10% on us. You are a longtime China bear. You've been monitoring the economy's transition from export investment-led to one that's consumption-led. You also teach at Yale Management School of Business. What kind of grade would you give this trade deal, this so-called trade deal?
I'd give it a temporary incomplete so far because we don't have all the details yet. And it doesn't seem to be a whole lot different from where we were, not too long ago. So I think we need to see, as always in these things, the devil's in the details. And so we'll have to see what goes on. But as I mentioned before we went on the air, it does appear that China ended up holding some cards after all.
Yeah, you're referring, of course, to rare earths and magnets. And it turns out that China does have a lot of leverage over that in terms of whether it allows licenses for export and how quickly it allows shipments. And this is something that industry had pressed President Trump on. Is this going to be a cudgel that Beijing continues to hold over the U.S.?
I mean, obviously, we're going to try to diversify and increase our sources of strategic metals and rare earths. I think the administration's been clear about that. But the fact of the matter is, Scarlett, I don't think the market ever really believed that the most onerous of tariffs was ever going to go in. I mean, even though the market was down 20% at one point at its worst day to day, I think on a daily close 12% in April. Earnings estimates for the S&P never really dropped that much. They've flattened out, but they didn't collapse. And so the market has been kind of looking through all this for a while now.
Yeah, well, one stock that did move a lot, of course, is Tesla. And as a longtime skeptic of Tesla, I'm curious to get your take on the very public breakup between Elon Musk and President Trump. Musk is now saying that he has some regrets over his comments, and he also says that they went too far. Does this drama change Tesla's narrative or prospects in any material way?
Yeah, it was all at the end of the day, big never mind, right? Look, I think that depending on how this all came about, there's all kinds of stories, and who knows? Certainly, everyone is going to tell their side of the story. The fact of the matter is, it does look like the legislation, with a lot of benefits for EVs and solar, is going to change that dynamic dramatically. And that does have a material effect on Tesla's businesses, both in the auto credits for their customers, $7,500 each, the so-called ZEV credits, the emissions credits that they sell for cash, that looks like it may be going away. and then a variety of possible IRA credits and certainly solar credits for their Solar City subsidiary. So there's a lot for them to lose in the House legislation. It may change with the Senate and with compromise. We'll have to see. But when we get past all the personal stuff and kind of all the craziness from last Thursday, there's some real impact in the legislation. And it doesn't appear that the White House is backing down on that.
Right, right. I mean, Elon Musk and his executives over at Tesla have also been promoting videos showing a driverless Tesla on the streets of Austin. And of course, that's a hint that their robo-taxi launch will move forward, I believe, at the end of this month. Does that remove some of the concern about the legislation that takes away some of those tax credits and tax benefits that Tesla has enjoyed?
Well, I mean, I think almost everyone at this point agrees that the company is not being valued for its auto operations. It would be trading at $30 or $40 a share, not 300 and something. So the two pillars or three pillars that it rests on are autonomous driving, related robo-taxis, and then the Optimus robot line. And so everything has to go right for those valuations to play out. We'll see. I mean, robo-taxi, yesterday there were images of a robo-taxi in Austin, but what no one talked about was the trailer car right behind it. So
I did see that.
So does that mean there's two cars for every robo-taxi? And there was a driver in the second car. And so, I mean, and the cost model for this, people are using absurdly low numbers for the cost per mile, not understanding the cost for redundancy and safety, as well as self-insurance and a lot of other costs that aren't in people who are bullish in their models. So we'll have to see. And as for autonomy, I mean, full level 4, level 5 autonomy, I mean, they've been promising it for 10 years now. But they're still at level 2, just like everybody else. I maintain by 2030 or so, every car is going to have level 4 or 5 autonomy. It's going to be a standard feature, like cruise control is now, or anti-lock braking. So I think at that point, you're then kind of relying on the robots.
我觉得老爷子观点表达已经很清楚了哈，就是可能他认为这个投资人呢没有看到这个robotaxi 背后的更多的 cost， 虽然它这个 miles 呢它的 cost 可能被人们低估了哈。那另外呢，老爷子很狠哈，他直接说这个如果按一个车企来定义特斯拉的估值，可能特斯拉每股只值30到40块钱哈。所以这是他4个月以前的观点，所以呢，这个是当时他做空特斯拉，但是3个月以前呢，他又被在采访中哈，他又给出了一些非常有意思的观点哈，我们一起来看一下，我们最后再一起总结一下哈。
Speaking of executive departures, I think there was another one today at Tesla. Someone who was I think pretty close to Elon, or someone who'd been there for a really long time. Do you have a
Nobody cares. Nobody cares.
Do you have a Tesla thought of the day?
Nobody cares. That's my thought. Nobody cares.
Yeah.
You could see Elon, robbing a Brinks truck with a mask on or whatever. Oh, that's Elon, I'm sure they're going to have a new business of robbing Brinks trucks, and we'll put a $1 trillion valuation on it. I've given up trying to figure out what people think about executive departures at that company. I mean, it's their car sales are plummeting, their cash flows plummeting, all the metrics that you would look as a security analyst. But it's a unique animal where people will say, oh, well, of course, yes, but Rosie the robot's going to serve me my breakfast, and it's going to have Tesla trademark on it, so it's worth $1 trillion. So there's always one stock in every bull market that has that, at least that imprimatur of I call it hopes and dreams. Everyone can really project their hopes and dreams onto that company and then value it any way they want. And Cisco was that company, by the way, in '99, and it's undoubtedly Tesla.
Yeah.
Because companies that are actually executing in some of these, fantastic areas of the future, like NVIDIA and others, trade at a discount to Tesla. And they're actually doing things. He's just talking about doing things. But it doesn't matter, at least not yet, to get to your timing question.
这个视频比较短啊，但是这个 title 写的是叫 Channels has given up to try to figure out 特斯拉哈，但是我觉得他并没有 given up 啊，他只是说 nobody cares。nobody cares 不等于他不 cares，他依然说呢，特斯拉是各项就是从一个分析师的角度来看，所有的指标都在下降，而且呢，他并没有像英伟达这样在真的做事情，他只是在 talking。然后呢，他又把它比喻成99年这个 .com bubble 这个破灭之前的这个 Cisco，所以呢，我个人我不认为他已经清仓了哈，所以这次财报呢，是我认为我是很少做空的，所以我也在考虑这个问题啊，还是可能不知道，可能拿一个小仓位去尝试一下。但是特斯拉今天的股价能涨到这里，能涨到现在这个位置，也得感谢这些做空的人，因为这些做空的人如果拿不住的话，他们很可能就是被轧空，然后呢继续推动股价上涨。所以特斯拉之所以能涨30%，一方面是这个市场对它的一种宽容，或者是在像老爷子说的这个特定的市场里面总有 hope and dreams 这种特定的这个股价的存在。那另外一种可能就是特斯拉的空头持续被轧空，所以呢他们不得不回补仓位，导致特斯拉的股价上涨。那最后到视频今天呢，我想关于特斯拉的所有内容我就说完了。总体来说呢，我对特斯拉持有主体还是观望态度，不参与，因为特斯拉它是一个非常特殊的一个热股，做空热股呢会造成巨大的损失。如果不看好呢，就也不要做空。如果想做空呢，可以拿一个小仓位，就当去买一个彩票，就不要去加仓或者是怎样。然后，如果想长期持有特斯拉的话，就是一定要理解说特斯拉目前是处于什么位置，然后它未来的这个发展线可能不像大家想象中那么快，它需要更多的时间。但是伊隆马斯克很有能力，他的未来呢也是光明的，他也曾经证实过自己，而且他接受了这个巨大额度的这个薪酬计划以后呢，他有自己买入股票，所以这些呢都是比较 positive 的事实。那在接下来几个季度，如果我看到他实实在在的做事情，因为股价经常出现的是它的这个表现不好的时候股价上涨，等它真正开始盈利的时候呢，股价就开始回调。那我会在它开始真正回调的时候呢，我再重新开始建仓特斯拉。那我感觉大胆的说一句啊，不构成任何投资建议。我觉得特斯拉的股价出现300以下没有什么太大的问题，这是在我这里的一个观点，我们拭目以待。那好，今天关于特斯拉就聊到这儿，祝您周末愉快，我们下期再见，拜拜。